everyone, to the first of the 5 deep dives under the plastic-free oceans track. My name is Anna Oposa. I am the Executive Director and Chief Mermaid of Save Philippine Seas, and I am also the Partnerships and Engagement Specialist of ADB's Healthy Oceans program. I am your moderator for this session. Before we head to the first deep dive, where you're going to be having an interactive discussion on circular economy, let's start with the bigger picture. If you're interested in the topic of marine debris and marine pollution, chances are you've already heard of this study that was published in 2015, naming several countries as contributors to plastic waste, as the biggest contributors to ocean plastic. And this research sparked an international discussion and international action. It was led by Dr. Jenna Jandek. She is a distinguished professor in environmental engineering at the University of Georgia in the US. Jenna is also a National Geographic explorer. So in this video, she'll set the scene and she'll talk about the global plastic pollution crisis, how it evolved, the differences between wastes in Asia and the US, existing solutions. Of course, we also want to highlight solutions, and this framework or this model that she calls the Circularity Assessment Protocol. It's a model that provides a snapshot of a city's circularity. I work closely with Jenna in implementing the Circularity Assessment Protocol here in the Philippines, and we interviewed almost 100 people on the waste value chain. So from waste pickers to executives of multinational companies, we interviewed them to get an idea of the different challenges and existing solutions. We also surveyed 27 sites to see what kind of plastic leaks into the ocean, and you'll see, and to the environment, and you'll see the results in Jenna's video. So let's watch and learn from this video.
In 1950, we only produced 2 million metric tons of plastic. By 2015, we had produced a cumulative 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic, which is an impossible number to imagine, even when considering that it weighs as much as 80 million blue whales. It is impossible to fathom. Because 40% of the plastic we produce is used in packaging and immediately becomes waste, 6.3 billion metric tons had become waste by 2015. And what had we done with that waste? Well, only 9% of plastic waste has been recycled globally. Everything that we observe about plastic that makes it so useful, it can be rigid, soft, firm, it can be any color of the rainbow. It can have additives like those used to protect from UV rays, make it challenging to recycle because there's such a variety of it. Globally, 79% of plastic had either ended up in landfills or in the open environment by 2015, and all of these values are expected to continue to grow. There are many global estimates of plastic entering the ocean from the coastlines and from rivers, with the most recent estimate putting it at 11 million metric tons, which is more than a dump truck of plastic entering the oceans every minute. Plastic has been found from the highest points in the world. I have colleagues who found microplastic at the top of Mount Everest, for example, to the lowest points on our planet, the deepest points of our ocean in the Mariana Trench. Plastic is everywhere we look, and so even places that we have not explored yet on the planet, often plastic has made it there before we do. 20 years ago, the term plastic pollution did not even exist, but in 2020, the term plastic pollution made the cover of Science magazine, and 2 parallel studies that had been conducted to look at how we can reduce plastic entering the ocean came to similar conclusions. The bottom line was that even with the actions that we were taking based upon the knowledge we gained in 2015 about plastics entering the ocean from land, the input would continue to grow unless we got much more aggressive with our actions. In a business-as-usual scenario, by 2030, 20 to 53 million metric tons of plastic could be entering aquatic systems. In order to reduce this quantity, we need to take action not only managing plastic waste that is generated, but reducing plastic waste that is generated in the first place. And cleanup may still be needed, but it cannot handle the current quantities entering the environment. Data collection at the cleanup stage is critical to designing interventions to specifically target what is leaking out. Based upon previous research, there was a focus on Asia, both South and Southeast Asia, for plastic leakage because of the high number of rapidly developing economies in these regions. In addition, many of the countries are island states with populations concentrated in coastal areas. However, the solid waste and plastic waste generation rates in Asia are about 2.5 times less than in countries like the US. In fact, when considering that the US has shipped plastic scrap for recycling mostly to Asia and relatively low-income countries, the US became as high as third in coastal mismanaged plastic waste because of these practices. Instead of a focus on high-income nations producing significant quantities of waste, Asian countries and other locations of rapidly developing economies that were not able to develop infrastructure to manage plastic waste generated by such a fast-growing consumerism and economic growth have been a focus. Most recent estimates looking at rivers still show that, although plastic consumption and waste generation on a per capita basis is still small, managing the waste in many Asian countries is still an ongoing issue that many are grappling with. While island nations in the Pacific have smaller populations, the challenges of waste management can become critical since so many rely on imports and exports of packaged goods and have little land for managing waste. With a global agreement in discussion right now, the interventions across the board are not the same in different locations, but looking at a framework of interventions provides options to reduce the input of plastic into the environment. Starting with reducing the plastic used, including reducing production of the quantities or types of plastic, should remain an option where it makes sense. Second, reducing waste generation by finding ways to decouple waste generation from economic growth, like getting products to people without producing waste in the first place. There is tons of room for innovation in this space and so many ways to use technology to smartly bring back reusable materials by incorporating this technology so that reuse can be just as convenient as disposable items. Then, if packaging cannot be avoided, we can look at alternative materials and innovative product design so that materials we use have value to enter back into the circular material system, which is a key component of the circular economy. And to keep this circular management system going, we need infrastructure, historically called waste management, but thinking about shifting this paradigm to materials management and including cutting-edge technology for processing and recycling materials, where, like in nature, nothing is considered waste, but all outputs become inputs into other systems. And if something cannot be an input into another system, we don't use it. Last, we will currently still need some last chance for litter capture, but data collection here is the key to finding out how to prevent leakage of plastic into the environment and not have to capture it once it reaches the ground and especially our waterways. These interventions sound relatively simple in some ways, but this is a complex system and an interdisciplinary issue. In order to catalyze change, there will need to be enabling policies, regulatory frameworks, resources, and financing, social sciences and the human dimension, including our behavior, for example, taken into consideration. Work we're now doing in my research group focuses on the front lines of this issue. Where waste decisions are made and where materials get managed are communities and cities. In this vein, we developed the Circularity Assessment Protocol, or CAP, as we call it for short. The CAP is a hub-and-spoke model that provides a snapshot of a city's circularity that can provide data for local, regional, or national decision-making to reduce leakage of waste, like plastic, into the environment and increase circular materials management. One of the goals of CAP is information exchange. A local community's knowledge and expertise is honored. Partners and teams build capacity through learning methods and collaboration. Debris Tracker, based in open data, citizen, and community science, is an important tool that is used by researchers and the community alike. Open data is very important to this process. CAP has been conducted in 27 cities and 10 countries to date, with more scheduled in 2022. Data is shared by the cities, sponsors, and collaborators, and compiled. Trends across cities, countries, and regions can illuminate global narratives and influencing factors. The information from a CAP is power that can result in community-based systems change, which can be measured with subsequent data collection strategies. The 7 components of the CAP provide a complete picture of materials flow using mixed methods, both qualitative and quantitative, for data collection and analysis. Local implementation partners conduct field work, which is how this work has been able to continue to progress during the COVID-19 pandemic. Locations where CAP has been conducted in Asia include Semarang, Indonesia, Manila, Philippines, Malacca, Malaysia, Kanto, Hanoi, and Nam Dinh, Vietnam, Pune and Chennai, India, and 11 different cities along the Ganges River in India and Bangladesh. The first component is input. What products are sold in the community and where do they originate? Next component is community. What conversations are happening and what are stakeholders' attitudes and perceptions? Next is product design. What materials, formats, and innovations are found in products, particularly packaging? Then we look at use. What are the community trends around use versus reuse of product types? Next is collection of materials. How much waste is generated? What is it composed of? How is it collected? And what infrastructure exists for this collection? Then next is what we call end of cycle. What is the fate of waste once it is properly discarded? How is it treated and managed? And last is leakage. What waste ends up in the environment and how is it getting there? In a compilation of 7 cities with 7 local implementation partners, we have a few summary statistics for you. 35,543 litter items were documented. Over 1,100 convenience products were sampled. Over 400 to-go items were sampled. And over 225 stakeholder interviews were conducted. And 140 restaurants and food vendors were sampled. Some top insights from locations in Asia. In some cities, products and packaging may be manufactured in-country, but parent companies are often thousands of miles away, so local manufacturing might help with local changes, but the faraway parent company locations could limit conversations about local changes if the power to change is not held at the manufacturing level. In most cases, products were packaged in film and multi-layer film that also might contain aluminum and other additives. To-go packaging from restaurants are often rigid plastics like polypropylene or polyethylene. The informal sector plays an absolutely critical role in materials management and recycling in these locations, an overall benefit to the community that is not always recognized or respected for the work that is done. Because of the organic growth of recycling, source separation is not a common practice where CAP has been applied yet. Leakage is primarily tobacco-related items and food wrappers, both of which are items that are often ranked 1 and 2 globally as well. The densities of litter observed across Asia vary. However, Southeast Asia appears more consistent with values that are lower than those found even in a large coastal city in the US and South Asia. The cities are now working on context-specific interventions that work for them, but can be shared and scaled through wider applications. The goal is to increase circular materials management, which inherently keeps the materials out of the environment. The plastic pollution intervention framework I outlined earlier allows the consideration of interventions and solutions from reduction to last chance capture. This week at the Healthy Oceans Tech and Finance Forum, you have the opportunity to learn more about the many possible solutions to the region's plastic pollution problem. Consider attending the deep dive sessions on circular economy, recycling, and waste management. Gain new knowledge by joining a training on circular economy. Participate in an experts clinic that addresses real-world issues on plastic pollution. Also, visit the virtual expo booths and learn about the latest developments and innovations that can help solve plastic waste issues in the region. Your full participation is welcomed and encouraged. Please ask questions, connect with speakers, and think about how you can take knowledge and examples back to your communities. Although plastic pollution is a global issue and we need global support and systemic change for positive impact, interventions in our own communities, where many important decisions are made, can reduce plastic pollution and protect our environment and our ocean. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that video. There was so much to learn there, and it really shows us that plastic pollution is a problem that all of us have to work together to be able to solve. And this is just the beginning. This is the first of 5 sessions under the Plastic-Free Oceans track. And we also have a circular plastics economy clinic and a booth spotlight happening on Friday. And there are 14 booths in the virtual expo related to plastics. So please take some time to explore that as well. To learn more about the deep dives, I'd like to call on James Baker. He is the Senior Circular Economy Specialist of ADB. He is responsible for leading ADB's Regional Marine Plastics Reduction Program, which I'm also part of, and supporting country programming, sovereign and private sector project teams to identify and promote circular economy activities within their programs and investment. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Anna, and hello, everyone, and welcome.
I think we lost James. Just see. So he's going to be introducing the deep dive.
Questions posed by these plastics has grown, so too has our understanding of how to better manage plastics in our communities, on land and in the ocean environments. By combining global frameworks with local action to address the key intervention points in plastic management, reducing the volume of plastics entering our oceans and reversing the damage they've already done to our global environment. So following on from that introduction by Dr. Jambek, what can we expect over the next few days? So the routes to plastics-free oceans require a wide range of interventions to reduce the presence of plastics both in our daily lives, in our land environments, and also in our ocean environments. So we're going to look at how to better manage those plastics, reduce, remove, and hopefully avoid future pollution in the oceans. The underpinning framework of circular economy in our sessions will cover the full spectrum of plastic reduction and substitution in the packaging supply chain through recycling, reduce, and the fundamental knowledge required to better recover plastics from our waste streams and landfills. In session 1, we'll take the first steps and explore the basic concepts and the opportunities around circular economy. This will provide us with a foundation of understanding to help us move into a more detailed deep dives. Session 2 will take us deeper into the enabling conditions needed for private sector to support communities and countries as they transition to circular economy solutions for plastics. Session 3 provides some clear examples of success in the circular economy and draws out key learning from these examples. Thursday's sessions will help us to understand the role of technology and innovative solutions in addressing plastic pollutions. And our speakers will also help us to understand how technology can integrate with existing systems and how innovation is leading responses to our ocean plastics in new directions. So it's interesting to see what ADB is doing. And during the introduction to our forum, by VP Susianto mentioned many activities, but ADB has prioritized technical development, innovation, and investment for healthy ocean and circular economy alongside wider climate change, ocean disaster resilience, and environmental sustainability under our operational priority 3. With $5 billion already earmarked for ocean health, supporting a wide range of technical assistance projects, sovereign and private sector investments, ADB is working closely with the Global Environment Facility and other donors to deliver regional, national, and local solutions across the circular economy value chain for both plastics and other materials. Recognizing the importance of technology and innovation in addressing the environmental sustainability challenges of our developing member countries, high-level technology and digital solutions are fully integrated into our promoting action on plastic pollution from source to sea technical assistance projects. This integration is further supported by technology funding for operational projects to ensure that all available tools are used to address ocean plastic reduction. Thanks to the hard work for the forum team, we have a distinguished and varied group of speakers and presenters who together represent the leaders in addressing ocean plastics. I encourage everyone to enjoy and fully participate in our events over the next following days, to learn, share, and innovate together as we continue to strive for plastics-free oceans. Thank you very much, and back to you, Anna.
Thank you so much, James. We'll see you again towards the end of the session. You're not free to go just yet. Okay, so now that we've learned about the different deep dives, we've also set the scene on the issues in plastic pollution. We are ready for our first deep dive. And as I said earlier, this session is meant to be interactive. So if you have a second device or a second browser, we invite you to log into Mentimeter. Just go to menti.com and type in the code 33500500. Feels like I'm saying like a phone number. So that's 33500550. And we're going to start with a bit of a check-in. So since this is an oceans forum and we can't see you, this is completely virtual, we want to know what the kind of like the vibe of the room is. So we always do this check-in. What are you feeling today? What is your spirit animal today? Are you feeling mighty and unstoppable like a whale? Do you feel like a star, like a sea star? Are you like a shark that's just kind of like moving, continuing to move? We see some answers coming in. And while we're waiting for more answers to come in, it's my honor to introduce our speaker. If you watched the opening plenary, he was there as well. Dave Albao. Dave, come on the screen. Dave is the Executive Director of the Philippine Reef and Rainforest Foundation, Inc. And for the last 4 years, Dave and the people that he's worked with have expanded the foundation's portfolio in supporting a network of marine protected areas, as well as implementing different projects to reduce ocean plastic. And that's the Wala Usik campaign, which you will hear a little bit more about later. Hi, Dave. Welcome to Deep Dive 1.
Hello. I'm feeling like a sea star today.
You're feeling like a sea star? Okay, good. I think I'm feeling
and
like
I can see a lot of...
I'm feeling like a, let's say, whale, mighty and unstoppable. And it seems like a lot of people are feeling like a sea turtle today. And no puffer fish, did you see? No puffer fish. Okay. So a few months ago, we organized a series of circular economy talks for ADB when we asked participants also what came to mind. And these are the words that came up. There's reduce, reuse, recycle, of course, the 3 R's. We can't talk about waste management without talking about the 3 R's. We also see pro-environment, zero waste, resilient and sustainable inclusive. Lots of good words here. Waste, sanitation, recycling. And we're going to see if these words are aligned with your presentation. So over to you, Dave.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to introduce circular economy, especially from the experience of communities on the ground. I'm so honored. I was listening to James earlier speak about circular economy. He's a senior circular economy specialist, so we would like to also hear his thoughts later on certain materials that you're very familiar with in your day-to-day life. So let's start. You're still back at menti.com. Let's go back to the Menti prompts. How well do you know the circular economy? Let's ask this question first. On a scale of 1 to 5, how well do you know the circular economy? Again, you can go to menti.com and use the code 33500500. You can either answer, I don't know a lot about circular economy, this hearing this, or you can say, I'm a sea expert, meaning you've been working on this field or your projects are in this area. Again, menti.com at 33500500. We are seeing 11 responses here, 12 responses. This is a great way to test the waters, as they say. A lot of puns this week for oceans. So we're testing the waters where people are, and you can see 2.7, 2.6%. Not exactly half of the scale. And that's all right. This is a great session for everyone. And I would like to say that we are all learning, including myself. I continuously learn about circular economy. So our next question is, we would like to know, on a scale of 1 to 5 now, with 1 being no idea and 5 being confident, Do you know how circular economy applies to your current line of work? You don't need to be in the field of environmental conservation or sustainability, but you might actually be involved in circular economy, as the term implies, economy. So it might be business, it might be a social enterprise. Have you involved this principle in your work? I still see some answers coming in, and I can also, we see here, Anna, that it's around the middle. So great answers, great insights, about the audience today. Thank you so much for your participation. So hang on, we will have more Menti prompts. Let's make this session interactive. And feel free to ask questions. Now, the third question that we have on Menti is, what is circular by design? Which of these are circular design? Glass bottle, the clear PET bottle, compostable bag, reusable canvas bag, and refill system. I'm sure you're very familiar with these materials. I personally, for example, have reusable canvas bags when I go shopping. So I would probably answer that that's circular by design. That's an assumption that most people about reusable items that are circular because it's still in the loop. And later today, I will not be answering which ones are circular. We will be going through first the session and also hear from James, our circular economy specialist, on which of these items are linear or circular. Great. I can see that the refill system and the reusable canvas bags are the top items on this circularity question. Wonderful. Thank you again so much. 31 people responded. I love it. Okay, now let's go to defining circular economy. What is a circular economy? We will go to that definition by first defining what is not a circular economy. So in this model, if you look at this, the summary is we take, we make, and we waste. We take something, we extract a resource from our planet, we produce materials, we distribute them, we consume them, and then at the end of their life, we dispose of these materials. This is, of course, a very simple framework, and real life scenarios are more complex, but the model looks like a line because we have a start of life and an end of life, and we are assuming two things: that we have infinite resources around us that we can extract at any time, and then we also assume that the Earth has an infinite regenerative capacity, meaning it can take what we're disposing, it can absorb what we're disposing infinitely. But of course, that is not the case, right? Our Earth is not infinite. If you look at the next slide, you can see a picture of this beautiful ecosystem. This is my workplace. This is where I connect with nature. This is the Hugan Island in Negros Occidental. So many people love this island, but this is where you can see that the Earth, the resources that we have are definitely not infinite, meaning fish can decline, the fish populations can decline, the ecosystems can be degraded, and we can use up this planet. And a lot of us are not familiar with this concept because we always feel that everything is abundant. So next slide, please. Let's now go to the principles of circular economy. In fact, circularity is very natural. You can see that in nature. And it's a very poetic representation. A circle. What we produce goes back to the earth. This is a natural design of many, of all habitats and species in nature. So our principles, there are three. We are shifting to a system where we, number one, and I'm sure you're very familiar about this, design out waste and pollution. We are designing waste out of the systems. How can we reduce waste in a circular economy? And the second is keep products and materials in use. We do our very best to value the materials that we extract from the earth and we keep them in use. That's a circular practice. And third is, and this is the most difficult part sometimes, is that in this economy, we're also regenerating natural ecosystems. This is the core of the work that we're doing here in Negros, in the Philippines, regenerating ecosystems from economic activities. Is that possible? Yes, we see models of this, but let's proceed with the next slide so we can see where you are at yourself. If you're currently involved in an environmental sustainability project, which principles does it align with? Remember the three principles of circular economy: design, out waste, and pollution. Are your projects trying to reduce waste by design? Are you trying to audit what wastes are being produced, especially single-use plastic, and remove that from your operations? Are you promoting reuse of materials in your operations? Are you regenerating natural systems? And if you're not involved in environmental sustainability, or you're not sure if you're aligned with these principles, that's also fine. This is a really cool Menti tool, by the way. You can see dots on the screen, and you can see where most of the people in this room are. So we can see that the majority are trying to decide about waste and pollution and keeping products and materials in use. Out of 17 people, again, menti.com 33500500. Thank you very much for your responses. And there's an 8-second delay on the live stream, so I hope you catch all of your responses. Okay, great. So a lot of you are aligned with circular economy, in fact. Thank you. Okay, let's proceed with this photo. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the milkman model. Years back, when you order milk, it comes in a glass bottle and it will be delivered to your doorstep. And then the next day, they will exchange the empty bottles with pre-filled ones. So this is a very simple representation of a circular economic model in that community. And we will talk more about circular models in practice as we go on in this session. So where are we now? Remember, we talked about that line. So that's what we call a linear economy. And then what we are striving for is a circular economy. I don't want to dichotomize all of what we're doing between the two. Like, is it a line? Is it a circle? Because there are also models, like where we are right now is probably in the middle or around the middle with an economy with feedback loops. So we have raw materials coming in, we're trying to recycle to put them back in, but there's still residual waste. The ideal, the one that we're transitioning towards, is where materials ideally would still be valuable even after their end of life, and that they can be put back to the economy, or to the system, to the production system. I know this is easier said than done, and if you have experience in this field, please feel free to share your thoughts, because I know this is easier said than done. So next slide, please. All right. Since we're talking about circular plastics economy today, let's talk about our love story with plastic. I love Jenna's presentation because it gave us the data that we need. We know that plastic is it keeps pests, microbes, and humidity away from food. It's light, and especially compared to glass, the cost of logistics is significant. There's a significant difference. And of course, the third characteristic is that it's built to last, and this is because it's durable and reusable. And unfortunately, this is also what creates a bad romance. On the next slide, you will see the issues that we have with plastic. It harms the environment. We've already heard that from the beginning of this forum. So now that plastic there's 8 million tons of plastic ending up in our oceans annually. We see the studies of Jenna showing that where the source of these ocean plastic, it could also cause and decline in oceans' economic benefits, when it's degrading our fisheries, aquaculture, and tourism opportunities, then of course it could cost us going broke. And it's not a match made in heaven, because the infrastructure and logistics for solid waste management are either not in place or not efficient for it to be recycled. This is very true to many developing member countries. Now, with COVID, I know you are familiar with online shopping and food delivery, and unfortunately, we sometimes find ourselves helpless because the system is definitely on single use. And of course, with the medical equipment and the lack of facilities to process medical waste, we are also dealing with something like the face mask that you can see in the photo attached to Seahorse. We also see loss of funding, loss of mobility, and increase in e-commerce activities, definitely also contributing to the issues that the circular plastics economy is trying to address. Now, let's go back to menti.com, because I've been talking for so long now. I want to check in with you. What single-use plastic item was unavoidable for you during the pandemic, but wish that there was an accessible or affordable alternative? Menti.com, and use the code 33500500. The options are face masks and face shields being unavoidable. I think majority of us will answer such. Food deliveries, are you using Grab or Uber Eats? Is this something that you every day that you wish there was some sort of accessible alternative to single-use packaging on these items, or others? And if it's others, feel free to type it in the Q&A or on the chat option of this live stream. Very, very interested to know, what is an alternative for a face mask? There's a lot of debate about reusable cloth masks being able to efficiently protect us from pathogens like the coronavirus. But I know there's a lot of innovations in that field as well. And food deliveries, I will share a circular model later on to explore what alternatives we have there. Okay, thank you so much for participating. Let's move on. Scan this QR code if you would like to receive Breaking the Plastic Wave. It is a report published by the Pew Charitable Trusts, partnering with Systemic. It's a global analysis using first-of-its-kind modeling, showing that we can cut annual flows of plastic into the ocean by about 80% in the next 20 years by applying existing solutions and technologies. It's a great report. I recommend you to scan the QR code on your screen and download this PDF. Now, let's go to the salient points of the system change scenario that is being discussed in this report. I know it might be too small for you to see, but this is found in the same PDF that I recommended. Again, it's called Breaking the Plastic Wave. You can also Google that. You can see 8 complementary system interventions across the plastics value chain that we can do to change the system for a circular plastics economy. Number 1 on that list is reduce. Interesting that, when you go to the next slide, let's go to, and you can find that this again on the report. And the next slide shows you the business as usual scenario, something that you hear all the time, especially if you're already connected with ADB. What is the business as usual scenario? You can see that 44% is being managed or disposed. And unfortunately, more than half of the waste in this study is mismanaged. In a system change scenario, we are wanting to reduce the mismanaged waste from 56% to 10% under the system change scenario, while 47 or almost half of it will be reduced and substituted, and then another almost half of it is for recycling and disposal through landfills. So this is a graph that would be interesting to see in the PDF. And you can also see another one that shows, I think it's about investments. Next slide, please. You can see business as usual investments. And it shows you that the system change scenario that we're talking about, meaning that changing the system towards a circular economy, it requires less capital investment than business as usual, but the investments are riskier. I'm not an expert on this. Definitely, we can ask our expert later. But based on this report, we can see, and it's very understandable that transitioning is riskier because the logistics and the systems are not yet in place, and transition costs will be normal. And unfortunately, some of the costs will be transferred onto the consumers. I'm hoping that this is interesting to you. Again, download Breaking the Plastic Wave if you want to learn more. There's another something I'd like to share with you are the concept of upstream and downstream innovations. Innovating upstream means you're reducing or rethinking products and services at the design level, because this is where the source of plastic is from. Downstream is what we usually do. It's waste management, recycling technologies. Ellen MacArthur Foundation also has materials about upstream innovations. What are those technologies that we can explore? And moving forward, you can also find, next slide, please. Okay. Challenges. The challenges that we're facing in transitioning. We have social, of course, and technical. This is where ADB and a lot of organizations that are supporting plastic reduction projects are focusing on upfront investments, addressing institutional challenges. Now, let me ask you, which of these challenges are you encountering and need to improve on? I know you're encountering maybe all of them, but let us know what you think are your top usual challenge that you're trying to address. Is it the social aspect? Is it the community buy-in on circular economy initiatives? Or let's just say simply reducing plastic waste or managing plastic waste in communities. And I know a lot of us, or all of you, know this problem, can see this problem in your communities. Do you think it's about the money? Is it about making it accessible and affordable in a large scale? I can see that few answered technical challenges. It's the lowest. I'm sure there's a lot of technical expertise around, but there are also institutional challenges. I think government is part of this, and governance and policy. Very interesting to see your answers. Thank you so much again for participating. There's a delay, so I'm waiting for a bit more. There you go. I can see institutional challenges. It's a trending, it's the trending answer. And I'm very curious to hear more thoughts about that later on in our discussion. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about benefits. Is lower pollution really a benefit that we measure? I'm very interested. But of course, in our work with circular economy, we, as you can see in Jana's presentation earlier, we do measure the waste and see if there's an impact, if we're lowering pollution. Are we also strengthening local communities? Is this something that communities can find opportunities in employment and livelihood? Is there an increase in productivity and savings? These are what we believe are benefits, and I'm sharing this as in the form of questions, because on menti.com, again, go to your second device or your other browser. The code is on the screen, 33500500. Which of these benefits directly relate to your current work? If there's one benefit that you're very invested in, that you want to bring to your community, what would it be? I would probably answer, of course, at first, lower pollution, because I love the ocean so much. But over time, I have found that more important than that, to be honest, are strengthening the local communities. Because once we strengthen communities, we can basically address issues like pollution and much more. So I can see that a lot of you are agreeing to me. Strengthening local communities is in the top choice at Menti, but there's also increase in productivity and increase in savings. This is usually the interest of many communities as well, because at the end of the day, a fisher that earns $1 a day would care about savings and not necessarily the pollution, right? And this is something that we can see from the grassroots. So interesting to see that a lot of you do see that strengthening local communities is the benefit that you are directly involved with, and that's a good thing. Thank you. All right. Before I go back to that quiz that we had about which items are circular by design, let's go through a few circular models in practice before we bring in James and also Anna. This is the work that I have experience with since 2018. We've had grants and funding to explore redesigning systems such as at the Sari Sari store. If you are not from the Philippines, these are small community convenience stores that you can find in almost every corner of the country. It sells fast-moving consumer goods in sachets. And so our question was, can we redesign them as refilling stations? So what you can see in the photo are dispensers. They're prototypes, so they're very crude. And of course, we've encountered so many challenges in this transition. But what we've tried to do over the last 4 years now is to understand what are the enabling factors. How can we enable a transition like this in the local community level, where they can access the same products, but without the single-use plastic packaging, but also with the same price points. We know that sachets work because they're affordable, but how can we do that in a refilling system? Okay, the second model is Bearpack. I said earlier that there are communities that are trying to address the problem of food delivery packaging issues. So Bearpack is this shared reuse system for food containers from takeouts and delivery in Singapore. So it's a startup. You can go to their website. Very interesting model. It involves an app to track these shared containers, and it reminds me of those e-bikes that you can rent in cities like Taipei. You know that everyone owns these containers, and we're all responsible for it. But of course, this comes with challenges as well, right? Definitely with the system, the logistics that are involved, and also losing these containers. And by the way, if it's in the Philippines, you'll be asked who will carry the cost of washing them. If it's a business owner, they will probably care about the water use, right? So I'm sharing this here because this is a model that we see emerging also in other countries. And would it be applicable to developing member countries like the Philippines? We tried doing this also in our Walausik expansion for carinderias or street eateries and small restaurants. Is it possible for them to, for their suke or their loyal customers to own these containers and keep them and use them again when they buy food stuff from their favorite restaurants or eateries? That's a question, an interest of ours. Third circular model in practice that we're seeing, something that I also want to emphasize is repairs. You know, in the Philippines, and I think in many of our countries as well, there would be this repair business. It's usually for shoes that you can find, and clothes to repair clothing like jeans. So Nudie Jeans is a Swedish company that just so exciting. Just Google them if you want to know more. But they promote using the jeans longer. So their stores have sewing machines so you can repair them. So I know that I've shared such models. So now let's go back to the next. So let's go back to this question. What is circular by design? And I'm excited to bring in Anna and James to come back on screen.
Hi, we're back.
So log in again to medi.com on your second device, 3350-0500. Anna?
Yeah, so earlier we showed you these items and we asked you which ones you think are circular by design. Now we're going to find out the answers and why these are the answers. Our quiz, we're the quiz masters, Dave and I, and our what do you call that? Like our judge, our expert, James will be the one to explain to us why. So let's see if people are already in the Zoom. So in the Menti. So let's look at the next slide. So if you missed the first session, so you can see now our glass bottle circular by design. Is it circular? You're not sure, or not circular? So for those who missed the earlier part where we introduced the deep dives, James is a senior circular economy specialist of ADB who is leading the regional plastics project, and anything circular economy related gets thrown to him in ADB. So while we're waiting for answers, glass bottles. I have broken many glass bottles. See, more people are saying yes. So let's find out. They are indeed. So James, could you explain why you think they're circular? Why they're a circular example?
Great, Anna. Thank you very much. And it was interesting at the start of Dave's presentation that many people were unsure whether they knew what circular economy was. And I have to admit, even though as a circular economy specialist, sometimes I struggle. So glass bottles, yes, recyclable, especially clear glass bottles. When we start getting into colored, then they become more difficult to recycle. But clear glass bottles, easily recyclable. We do have some challenges, and I noticed in the Mentimeter comments there were a couple that said maybe. And I think there's a challenge here, which Dave mentioned about washing of bottles and reusable containers. The energy involved in creating clean water, heating the water, and then washing. And this is one of the challenges we have in all circular economy discussions. The item itself and the practice may be very clearly circular, but some of the aspects of using it become more challenging. And that's why when we look at circular economy challenges, and I noticed one of the questions that came is upcycling a strategy to achieve circular economy? You have to look at it and say, is the whole process circular? Is the whole process sustainable? And that's where the real challenge comes in. But we're happy to say at this moment, yes, glass bottles, I grew up in the UK where we had milk bottles delivered every morning. So yes, circular solution.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's a good thing that you brought up how there's an entire system. It's not just the material of glass, but it's also the energy, the water, the transportation also being used to deliver these products. We have to take that in mind. We have to consider that as well.
Yes, unfortunately, there's a lot of maths
Go ahead.
there. There's a lot of maths there.
Not my strongest suit, but okay. How about clear PET bottles? Are clear PET bottles circular by design? So if people are watching and they don't know what PET bottles are, they're the usual bottled water or soda bottles that we see that are soft. Sorry, not soft, but they're like the tougher kind of plastic. So now we're seeing some no's and some maybes. This is a confusing one. And just to touch on what James said earlier about not being sure of circular economy, there's actually a paper that was published looking at 114 definitions of circular economy. 114! Like I can't even keep track of how many that is and be able to go through all of those. So we're seeing more and more answers. Ooh, it's very, very close results. I see. Yes is catching up. So, Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
Combine no and maybe, you can see that they're not sure if it's circular. I mean, there's a lot of debate about this. I'm also interested to hear James' thoughts on PET bottles because PET is usually demonized, right? I mean, because it's plastic, even if it's something that can be recycled. James,
yep.
And why is it clear? Why is it specified that it's clear? You already mentioned color would change for glass. What about PET, James?
Okay, let's look at the answer. Go ahead, James.
So the problem with the colors is that as you start to recycle, it's very difficult to take that color out. So anything that is clear, whether it's a clear glass bottle or a clear PET bottle, is much easier to recycle. It can go back to being clear, or it can be colored in the future. Once it's colored, it's very difficult to take that out. And one of the challenges that we have in circular economy is the PET bottle itself is fine, but the additives that make it fire retardant, or the additives that prevent it leaching into the container for food grade, make it difficult to recycle. So PET bottles, and Dave, you mentioned they've been demonized, and for many years they were. And it's not particularly the bottle itself, but our attitude towards the bottle. If it's a single-use bottle, we throw it away. And because the waste management system isn't necessarily there to capture it and bring it back into recycling, then that's why we saw a lot of people early on say, no, this is a linear material, a linear idea. The work that we do at ADB is very much focused on building that recycling, building that recovery technology that allows us to make this circular. So the material, the PET bottle, yes, PET can be easily recycled. There's a lot of technology there. And we are building that capacity within our developing member countries. But I totally understand why many people say, no, this is a linear material.
Yeah, and we also have to point out that the bottle is PET, but the label is different. It's a different kind of plastic, and the cap is also different. So for PET bottles to be efficiently recycled, we do have to separate this, and yes, it has to be clear. And there's a beverage company that has I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but they changed their green packaging into clear packaging to make it more recyclable. And that just goes to show that we do need to change the design of these bottles for it to be recyclable.
Yeah, when many years ago, I built a recycling factory to recycle these plastic bottles, and the cap is HDPE, which floats, and the PET sinks, which makes it very easy to separate. But the challenge is the label also sinks and is PVC, so that causes contamination. So a very simple design flaw makes it difficult to successfully recycle. And this is something that we talk about a lot with packaging manufacturers and packaging designers, to think about how you design it to be recyclable. And that might be as simple as keeping those two separate plastics away from each other.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Dave, we are looking at this is a controversial one. Controversial in the plastics world. What? Sorry.
You want to ask me what my answer is on this? Because
we're gonna have a raging debate about this. If compostable bags are circular by design, we have to qualify, like circular by design.
So the compostable bags, so there are materials that are called biodegradable plastic, right? And of course, I think many of us are already aware that that's mislabeled, because there are certain conditions for these plastics to be able to not even to truly biodegrade, but they just break down to smaller pieces, correct? And then terms like also biodegradable because you need sun, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I need James to answer this question, but my quick answer to this is that compostables, though, talking about the future and innovating, if we can design space travel, like going to the moon, can we not design materials that are like materials in nature that can be returned back to the earth without harming it? I believe that can happen. So I'm not closing my mind whether it is not circular, but I can see that in the answers, a lot of people actually say that it's linear, that it's never going to be circular, even if, I guess, assuming that even if the compostables, like, coming from seaweed and bioplastic materials, can truly biodegrade, even without the composting facility. James, What do you
Okay,
think?
what is the answer? I feel like we need like a drum roll for this. No? Okay, let's check the next slide. James, what do you think? Ooh.
So yes, I mean this of all of the products we talk about, the concept of biodegradable or compostable plastic bags always causes discussions, sometimes heated amongst people within ADB, people within the larger ocean plastics world. For me, compostable plastic bags are essentially a sticking plaster over the problem. What we should be working towards is not throwing away plastic bags in the first place. Compostable plastics allow us to get away with throwing away plastics, with not using them properly, and then because they degrade or because they compost, their damage to the environment is less. So for me, they are not a circular product. They're not designed to be circular. Do they increase sustainability? Then yes, there is an argument there, but we're using, plant-based materials, seaweed-based materials to create the plastic rather than using fossil fuels. So there is a sustainability argument there. But in terms of circular, and the question is, are these a circular product? No, they're not.
Thank you so much for that. If I have to remind our audience, we have about 100 people watching. There is a Q&A. I don't know if I'm opening up Pandora's box, but there is a Q&A feature on the right side of your screen. We already have some exciting questions that are being put there. So if you have any questions, follow-up questions, violent reactions, you can post it there. Okay, let's move on to the next item, Dave.
Are reusable bags circular by design? And we mean the canvas bags that you bring to your shopping, or the eco bags. Unfortunately, some of us have like maybe 100 of them in our closet. Well, we still just have a few responses here, but we can see yes as the top answer now.
Remember the time when events were a thing, when we could do this in person and we always had like swag, like giveaways? I was always in tote bags. So I have like 1 million tote bags. I started giving away a lot of them already, actually. So let's see. We have some more yeses than nos and maybes. We can already check the answer, so we can go through the question and answer. Aha, circular. Reusable bags are circular. James?
Yeah, so I have to admit, I'm one of those people who has a huge collection of these bags because I always forget to take them with me when I go to the supermarket, and always buy some more with the absolute best intentions of reusing them. But circular.
That happened to me too. Yeah.
Circular, yes, we're using materials. They can be reused. They're strong enough not to enter the waste stream. And when they do enter the waste stream, they're either biodegradable or they can be reused within textile recycling. There are some arguments about the number of times that you have to use them to make them sustainable. And this, again, is this differentiation between circular and sustainable. So because of the energy that takes to create these bags in the first place, you perhaps have to use them 10 times to have a lower impact on the environment than if you were using single-use plastic bags that were being properly recycled. But as a concept, circular, one I like, and I just wish that I could remember to take them with me more often.
Yeah, I do that. That's happened to me as well, and I'm sure people are watching. This has happened to you as well, Dave. I'm sure this has happened to you. So now I just keep like two reusable bags in my bag all the time, just so that I don't forget. I think we have one more item, no? Yes, we do have one more item. A refill system. Is the refill system circular by design? Yes, no, maybe. Refill system meaning like for let's say shampoos or other items that you find in your household. You can go somewhere. This is more popular, I think, in the western side of the world where there are bulk stores. Here, we're only starting to see these bulk stores or these refill systems in the last maybe, let's say, 4 or 5 years. But of course, COVID has also caused some disruption. this is the most cliche word, disruption. But it did cause some disruption. Okay, so more people are answering yes. So far, no no's, and one maybe. Interesting. Okay. We see that yes is leading by far. So let's go and find out what the answer is. Yes, circular refill systems are indeed circular. And I'll ask you, Dave, later on what your thoughts on this are. But first, James, reusable bottles and refill systems, thoughts?
Yeah. So circular reuse, we like that. Refilling. We have the challenge, the same as we mentioned with our glass bottles, that challenge of washing. How do we keep them clean? How do we maintain the cleanliness? It's one of the big challenges for these systems across the world. Is how do we make sure that through lack of knowledge or through challenges with cleaning, we don't run into problems with cross contamination. So still some challenges, but no, very happy with refill systems as a circular solution. ADB is working to support those across our operational areas. It's something that we're interested in supporting. We're interested in working with communities to understand those challenges, the acceptance, and how best it can work. So very happy with that, circular.
Yeah, definitely. And Dave, you've been involved in circular refill systems, and how did that go? What you did 7 sari stores that were doing refills. What was the outcome of that?
It was actually 8, and we're still trying to do that now. The misconception is that bulk buying is it's only accessible to those who have money. So this is the challenge we wanted to address. Can we make this model something that communities in our province or in our country that are dependent on sari stores, can refilling happen in that level? And so far, and I'm going to say there's still a lot of work to do, because the logistics of this is not in place. The community buy-in, in terms of convenience and the time and the energy to do refilling is actually very important to the people, because they have jobs to do to put food at the table. So this is something that we're still exploring, but definitely if you there's 800,000 stores of this kind in the Philippines. What if there's a significant portion of it that transitions to refilling models? And I know you're also invested in this with our mainstream refilling petition with Save Philippine Seas.
Yes, we're trying to do the policy side of it. So thank you for playing along. We have completed our linear versus circular quiz. Let's move on to the question and answer. And we do have some exciting questions here. Let's start with this on COVID. So the question is, we were using cloth masks, but with Omicron and news saying cloth masks are not effective, went back to N95. And now we hear that the virus is staying on plastic and skin for a day and longer than other variants. So loose. I'm one of those people who switched. I used to have a cloth mask, and because of the recent studies, I also switched to another like a short-term use mask, I guess I would say. So you can't control food delivery and online delivery other than sending packaging feedback. So telling the vendors about the packaging, or stop using their service. So what to do? I think this is something that we're all struggling with and have thought about at some point. So I don't know, maybe James and Dave, what are your initial thoughts on this, and how have you been approaching this challenge? I'll start with Dave.
Oh, wow. I have the same challenge. And sometimes I do judge myself for not able to find solutions. However, in online shopping, you can see startups trying to innovate in this field, reusable delivery packaging. And we also see some demand from the market to redesign the systems by online shopping or e-commerce platforms.
How about you, James?
So it is a challenge, and I think it's a challenge that we've all experienced over the last 2 years. Human health, keeping ourselves healthy and safe during COVID has been a challenge, and we've all tried different solutions. As with a lot of plastics in our environment, the plastics itself, in this case the N95 masks, are not necessarily the bad guy in this story. It's our behavior as humans, how we dispose of those, and the ability of industry to collect that and to recycle it safely. And obviously with anything, very early on in the COVID pandemic, even before it was a pandemic, ADB was working with the cement industry, was working with hospitals to try and develop management systems for infectious medical waste. And I was fortunate to be part of that team. N95 masks are not the demon here. What we've got to look at is how humans behave with those masks when we dispose of them safely, work with industry, work with suppliers to make sure that those masks, when they enter the waste stream, are handled properly, are disposed of properly, whether that is by recycling or whether that is by incineration for medical waste to prevent the ongoing contamination and infection. On the delivery side of it, it gets a little bit easier. And I mean, you've mentioned here online delivery, and my brain immediately goes to online food delivery because that's something that I use a lot of. We have seen that governments are imposing limits on the amount of plastics used in deliveries. So if you live in a country that's serviced by Amazon, then you see a huge amount of cardboard, which is actually a very recyclable material. And you started to see less and less plastics involved. As you start to look at food delivery services, it is very difficult. The ultimate vote is by not using that service. You take your money elsewhere. Not always a suitable answer, especially if it's a product that we need. But there are opportunities. Grab have the opportunity where you can say, no, I don't want cutlery. There are small steps that we can take to try and move in the correct direction. And it's human behavior again. If everybody takes a small step, then we start moving in the right direction. But it is a challenge. It is something that I've seen governments and certainly other multilateral banks working to address. But there are some personal choices there that can help the process and can move us forward.
Great. Yeah, definitely. A lot of this relies on our personal choices. And there's always like this conflict. You want to support small businesses because they're all struggling in the pandemic, but there's also like, I don't want to use all this plastic. I don't know where it's going to go. So let's move on to a few other questions. There is a question here, James, this is for you. In the circular economy, what is being done is not only collecting, but also providing incentives to increase collector lives, build infrastructure, especially in developing countries, and develop supply chains to restore them as feedstock for manufacture. What is the role of ADB in this process?
So I mean, this is the core of the activities that our technical assistants, the one that Anna and I work together on, is looking at how we promote the collection, but also develop decent jobs within that collection system and ensure that these products can come back in the circular economy. And it's a step-by-step process. There are certain plastics, we've mentioned PET, we've mentioned HDPE, which already have a very circular economy because they're easy to recycle. So a lot of the interesting parts for us and where we look is at those plastics which have not currently recycled a lot, the sachets. I see there's also some questions about PVC and polystyrene. And the role in ADB in this process is to begin looking at these plastics within our communities. And this is an interesting aspect of what Dr. Jambag mentioned with her CAP, that assessment process to look at what plastics are in our communities, which plastics are currently recycled, which plastics could be recycled, which is where Anna and I work, and then which plastics we shouldn't have because they can't be recycled they're not. There's no way that they can be circular. And polystyrene, the lightweight polystyrene is one of those. There are arguments, we can recycle it, but the reality of it is, as a plastic in our community, it is incredibly difficult to recycle and to manage. It floats, it blows around, so that the best solution for that is just to avoid it. So ADB's role in this process is that study, is that technical understanding and education to decide, to help communities, help governments, help manufacturers decide which plastics are recyclable and should be recycled, and build collection systems that have decent jobs, decent work roles that are safe and inclusive within that industry. But then also look at those plastics which just shouldn't be used anymore. And extended producer responsibility is a key part of that.
Yeah, and there are actually going to be sessions touching on the topics that you brought about. There's a recycling session. There's also, and of course, we can't talk about circular economy without talking about extended producer responsibility. So if you are watching now, please make sure you stay tuned for the other sessions. Okay, we have one more question that I'd like to ask, and this is a good one. I get confused. What is the relationship between circular economy, sustainability, and greenhouse gas emissions? So Dave, I'll give this question to you.
Actually, James touched on it earlier. He mentioned that what was that? Reusable bags, I think, or the PET bottles as compared to reusable bags and the glass bottles as compared to the PET bottles and also even compostable bags. So, okay, sustainability, of course, is a larger and broader term. And circular economy is, under those sustainability initiatives. I mean, of course, there's a lot of definitions, as Anna said, but circular economy or being circular, sometimes, as James has pointed out, these circular interventions might require more logistics, but also reduce the use of fossil fuel, right? So they are interrelated, but they're not exclusively the same. So you by not using plastic made from fossil fuel, right? But at the same time, you might see that there would be an increase in other indicators like, other or greenhouse gas emissions from the other activities, let's say with the transport and logistics for those reusable items. Yes, we can also get confused about this, but again, generally, sustainability is a broader, for me, a broader term. Then you have circular economy as one of those approaches under that, and also using greenhouse gas to mitigate climate change. I think the bottom line of this, though, Amer, is that we're really doing this, all of these types of interventions or approaches to sustain our future. And I think the most important aspect of it, how can we ensure that we live on, our species lives on with enough food and with healthy oceans so that, we continue.
Yeah. And since we're on the topic, Dave, since we're on the topic of greenhouse gas emissions, there's a comment here from Leah Carrer, and she says, plastic pollution not only affects marine life, but also contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and persistent organic pollutants emissions during plastic production. So even the production itself is causing issues. And that's from oil and gas. And disposal or the burning of plastic also releases greenhouse gas emissions and persistent organic pollutants. It's important to highlight these climate change and chemical pollution impacts. Absolutely. We don't talk about it enough. I don't know, what do you think, James?
Yeah, so it's an interesting connection, and it's one that we've seen in ADB, is that the work that was done by Dr. Jambek highlighted the issues of plastics within our environment, and that sort of led to it being mainstream. But circular economy is a systems approach. It doesn't just, it's connected within this discussion with the oceans and marine life, but the management of plastics within the environment is a much larger discussion point. And this is where circular economy comes into it as a much larger systems approach, which looks, as Leia's mentioned, about the actual production of plastics. How do we get away from the production of plastics, and certainly the production of plastics from non-renewable sources, so fossil fuels. The recycling of plastics helps reduce those emissions. And also the recycling of plastics, we can get away from this disposal by burning, by open burning, by incineration, which generates the greenhouse gases, but also these persistent organic pollutants. So I think that the point that Leia's made is very important. We're at an oceans forum at the moment, and ocean plastics are a key part of this. But the solution to plastics goes much, much further inland throughout our everyday activities. And that reduction of plastics and the better management of plastics helps not just with the oceans, but helps with the reducing fossil fuel usage, helps reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, and helps manage those persistent organic pollution. So a very important point, and one that we're looking at as part of that whole system change approach.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we have come to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Dave and James, for joining me for Deep Dive 1.1. Imagine this is just the first of 5, and we have more exciting things for you. I think as my key takeaway from this session is that, I know this sounds so cliche, but in circular economy, it's huge and it's complicated, and it's connected to so many other topics, like we just discussed climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. We can't talk about we can't talk about plastic pollution without talking about how it has affected marine life, and then how COVID also has impacted how we live, how we use our things, how we dispose of our things. And we also had really good questions from the audience. There's a lot of interest in circular economy. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, James. And please don't forget to check out the other sessions. We have 4 more deep dives for you. We also have 14 booths at the virtual expo related to plastics, and some cross-cutting ones as well. And you can explore the web app. There are many features. You can connect to speakers. You can connect with speakers. You can watch replays of this in soon. They'll be up soon. And we hope you stay for the rest of the forum. My name is Ana Oposa. I have been your moderator, and I will see you on Friday for the Circular Plastics Economy Clinic. It is a project play shop, so it's going to be fun and interactive, just like the session. And we need you to be our experts for that session. So thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.